Coming up on Global Business, China's political season begins. The country's top political advisory body convened today to open its annual session right here in Beijing. Gauging the global response as the world tunes into China's political season, we explore the international reaction to uncover what the world seeks to know about China. And soaring prices, inflation in Turkey jumps by over 67% in February, keeping pressure on the country's central bank to keep monetary policy tight. And welcome everyone to Global Business here on CGTN. I'm Michael Wong in Beijing. The second session of the 14th National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, or the CPPCC, opened in Beijing on Monday. Chinese President Xi Jinping and other leaders attended the opening meeting. CGTN's Gao Ang has more.
China's top political advisory body opened its annual session in Beijing on Monday afternoon. Wang Huning, chairman of the CPPCC National Committee, delivered a work report.
We will focus on enhancing the professionalism and representativeness of CPPCC members, creating conditions to help them understand the situation and become familiar with policies, promote in-depth consultation and interaction, and build broad consensus.
Wang also stressed on promoting high-quality development and green efforts, as well as boosting scientific and technological innovation.
We have conducted a series of surveys on optimizing the development environment for private enterprises, held special consultations on new urbanization construction, and promoting the stable and healthy development of the real estate market, and held 4 symposiums on macroeconomic situation analysis to help boost development confidence.
This year marks the 75th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China, and also the founding of the CPPCC. Officials said since the first session of the 14th CPPCC National Committee, more than 5,600 proposals on various topics have been put forward. Over 2,000 CPPCC members from different walks of life have gathered in Beijing, and during the next few days, they will be offering advice and pooling wisdom for advancing Chinese modernization and fulfilling national economic and social development goals. Gao Ang, CGTN, at the Great Hall of People in Beijing.
Well, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference is the most powerful political advisory body here in China. It's responsible for political consultation, democratic supervision, and the deliberation and administration of state affairs. Now, specifically, it discusses major principles and policies proposed by the central and local governments. The CPPCC gives proposals on matters concerning political, economic, cultural, and social affairs. It supervises the implementation of the Constitution and the country's rules and regulations. It also conducts investigations and studies into social conditions and popular sentiments. And the annual session of the National People's Congress opens in Beijing on Tuesday. On Monday, a spokesperson held a press conference answering questions on the agenda and work of the legislative body. CGTN's Dai Kai-yi has more.
The spokesperson announced that the second session of the 14th NPC will start on March 5th and conclude on March 11th, lasting 7 days. The agenda includes deliberating upon the government's work report and reviewing the progress on the implementation and draft plan for national economic and social development. Reports on central and local budgets will also be studied.
今年是中华人民共和国
This year marks the 75th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. It's a crucial year for achieving the goals of the 14th Five-Year Plan and also the 70th anniversary of the establishment of the National People's Congress. The upcoming second session of the 14th NPC session is a significant event in the country's political life this year.
The spokesperson says the NPC system has weathered storms over the past 70 years and witnessed rainbows, providing vital institutional support for achievements in both rapid economic development and long-term social stability.
The central task of the 14th National People's Congress and its Standing Committee is to fully implement the principles outlined in the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China. This involves providing legal support for comprehensive national development and the Chinese version of modernization and rejuvenation.
During this year's session, there will be 3 concurrent press conferences inviting senior officials from relevant departments of the State Council to address questions on diplomacy, economy, and more.
As China marks its 75th anniversary and enters a pivotal year for achieving its 14th five-year plan, all eyes are on the agenda set forth in Beijing, which is expected to touch upon various aspects of the country's development, including its economy, scientific innovation, and people's livelihood. 戴凯毅 CGTN Beijing.
Well, this year marks the 45th anniversary of China-U.S. diplomatic relations. Lo Qinjian, a spokesman for the second session of the 14th National People's Congress, said at a press conference on Monday that China will work for a stable, healthy, and sustainable relationship with the United States. Take a listen.
中美关系稳下来。
To stabilize and improve China-U.S. relations is something that everyone follows closely and expects to see. China's position has been consistent. That is, we will follow the principles of mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation put forward by President Xi Jinping, and work for a stable, healthy, and sustainable relationship with the United States. We have taken concrete actions toward that. It is hoped that the U.S. will honor its commitment, build stronger the 5 pillars for China-U.S. relations, and translate the understandings and vision agreed on by the 2 presidents at San Francisco into real actions.
Well, for more on what American businesses may be looking out for during China's 2 sessions this year, I want to bring in our John Terrett in New York. John, so China is the 3rd largest trading partner of the United States. What do U.S. businesses expect from this year's 2 sessions?
Michael, good morning from New York. It's only just after 8 o'clock in the morning here. Our day only just getting underway, but Wall Street is waking up to pay particular attention to the beginning of China's political season, both on the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange, nearby our newsroom here, but also in the corner offices. Now, corner offices, that in American is slang for the boss. So the bosses in particular paying attention to what happens over the next handful of days and weeks. Now, a clue came last week at no lesser place than the Great Hall of the People itself, because there Premier Li Qiang met with Suzanne Clark, who is the president and the CEO of the United States Chamber of Commerce. When you leave the White House in Washington, D.C., the first building you come to is the Chamber of Commerce, and that speaks to the relationship that there is in America between politics and business. Very, very important. As you said just now, the meeting at the Great Hall of the People between the Premier and Suzanne Clark honoured the fact that it's now 45 years since the opening up of diplomatic and trade relations between Beijing and Washington, D.C. Li Qiang saying that cooperation is the only correct choice. And Suzanne Clark saying that the relationship between the 2 capitals is extremely important, and offering the Chamber to be a bridge to make the relationship at business and trade level much smoother going forward. And in Chinatown, here in New York City, just around the corner from this newsroom, at the weekend, I found very similar sentiments to the ones expressed by the Premier Li Qiang and by Suzanne Clark. From Jay Woods, first up, he is the global strategist, the chief global strategist at a company called FCM. You'll see him on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And then Wellington Chen, who's the executive director of the Chinatown Partnership Local Development Corporations. Note how similar what they say is to what the Premier Li Qiang and Suzanne Clark had to say last week. Take a listen.
Well, U.S. investors want as much free trade with China as possible. Those 2 markets, they're friendly, but unfortunately there's too much political banter between the 2 nations, and that really takes away from any of us as investors, getting involved in the markets the way we want to.
The business community is very practical. They just want to improve their economic lives, which in turn improves their whole well-being, their family life, their children's future, and all of that. So I always like to think of it as being your business partner. If something happens to you, it will affect me badly. So therefore, if there's a good working relationship, it's good for both of us.
And China's foreign ministry said on Monday that foreign companies, including U.S. firms, are bullish on China's economic outlook and plans to invest more in China. Spokesperson Mao Ning cited data from the Commerce Ministry, saying China's actual use of foreign capital in 2023 totaled some 1.1 trillion yuan, ranking first globally. And Mao said that China is committed to the policy of high-level opening up and will strive to create a world-class business environment with more support for foreign investors. Mao added that companies from the U.S. as well as other countries are welcome to strengthen cooperation and dialogue with China. Well, it will be the first anniversary of diplomatic relations between China and Honduras in 3 weeks' time. Honduran ambassador to China, Salvador Moncada, talks about potential cooperation opportunities with China on a recent visit to Sichuan province. Take a listen.
I have been to China many times. The first time in 1989, and since then I have come several times. So I have witnessed the changes in China over the years. I think that is a great experience for somebody coming from the global south, where there is poverty and there is inequality, to be in China and to see how China has solved the problem of extreme poverty and inequality. We strongly believe in the Belt and Road Initiative and in the objectives in terms of changing into a green economy in the world. We strongly believe that green economies are the economies which are necessary in the world at this moment. We are doing our best effort in Honduras to change from fossil fuel dependent economy into a green energy dependent on renewable sources of energy in Sichuan province and in Chengdu, because we know the main strength that you have in all these areas of green energy. So we came here because we know that there is a possibility of a very strong interaction and that we are going to really work for collaboration that is going to be, for us, definitely positive. I think the province of Sichuan is strong in biology and biotechnology. I think that again opens up an opportunity for Honduras. We have, from a scientific point of view, a development which is low, and we are only or mainly going to benefit from interacting with you.
And also during this political season here in China, our Li Mengyuan spoke to the Moroccan ambassador to China, Abdelkader Al-Ansari, for his take on the prospects for bilateral relations, especially on the economic front.
You just took office as the ambassador to China this February. So could you please share some of your thoughts that you came to China this time?
Let me say that I am coming back to China with big pleasure, because I was before director for Asian Affairs and Oceania in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Morocco. And in this capacity, I had a big privilege to visit China many times. China could be a good market. It's a huge market by the number of the population, by the level of the income of people, and we think that we can have some place in this huge market.
The Moroccan market has attracted significant investment from China under the BRI framework. What notable encounters or stories stood out to you while engaging with the enterprises from China investing in Morocco?
We are trying at our level, at the official level, to put all the conditions and the requirements for the Chinese enterprises, either from the public sector or the private sector, to come and to invest and to make business in Morocco. Morocco has signed dozens of free trade agreements with many countries and regions, and it gives now access, and it will give access in the next few months and years to something like 2.4 billion consumers. So you can imagine the potential that exists for Chinese enterprises and investors to develop business with Morocco, but not only with Morocco, but all the region and our other partners within Africa, in North America, and Morocco is really ready to be one of the essential partners for China to develop, as I said, not only bilateral relations, and this is our common ambition, but also our relation with our respective regions.
And our Frank Contreras spoke with Enrique Dussel, the director for the Center of China-Mexico Studies at the National Autonomous University. They discussed a wide range of topics, including Chinese investment in Mexico and more. Take a listen.
Can you tell us, in recent times, after the pandemic, how has it gone for China in places like Mexico, Brazil, and in other parts of South America, with Chinese investment in Latin America?
I would tell you, in the last 5 years, the catchword is probably China's diversification in terms of investments in Latin America. Diversification by country. Historically, in the first 10 years of the 21st century, most of Chinese investments were concentrated in Brazil and in Argentina, buying raw materials, from oil to gas to investments in the petrochemical sector, meat, minerals, etc. And Chinese investments and firms, and this is an absolutely fascinating topic that we've been working together with Chinese colleagues, but also with Chinese firms, visiting firms all over Latin America. Chinese firms have been learning. No?
With the reorientation of global supply chains, we still see a great amount of investment from China here in Mexico. Mexico is becoming very, very attractive as a platform for trade with the United States. What amount of investment are we talking about in terms of US dollars?
According to our statistics, the ones that we do at our academic network for Latin America and the Caribbean, China has invested in Mexico almost $21 billion until 2022. According to our data, $21 billion. This is very probably going to increase, but again, in this new triangular relationship, and in which we are living between the United States and China, this can affect the relationship between China and Mexico.
And still to come here on Global Business. Soaring prices. Inflation in Turkey jumps by over 67% in February, keeping pressure on the country's central bank to keep monetary policy tight.
The National People's Congress, China's top legislature, and the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, the country's advisory body, convene their annual sessions in Beijing. Lawmakers and advisors will assess the country's performance, craft laws, and refine policies that will chart a course of China's ongoing modernization drive. Beijing once again hosts the two sessions, where China takes stock of what it has achieved and where it's headed next. Join us as we bring you highlights and analysis of China's agenda in our special coverage of the two sessions, here on CGTN.
Welcome back. A look at other headlines we're tracking at this hour. Turkey's annual inflation rate climbed to 67% in February. That beat what the markets were expecting and also maintains pressure on the central bank to keep monetary policy restrictive. Strong price increases in food, hotel, and education led to the high inflation print. The central bank has now paused its tightening cycle, saying that the current 45% policy rate is sufficient to bring inflation down. According to Kyodo News, Japan is considering calling an end to deflation in the wake of rising prices. That would turn a new page for the world's fourth largest economy after decades of economic stagnation scarred a generation of workers and investors. And Moody's Investor Service has sharply raised its GDP forecast for India from 6.1% to 6.8% for this year. It's following the strong momentum seen in recent quarters, which the ratings agency expects will continue throughout this year. Well, Fiji's economy relies heavily on tourism, which generates billions of dollars each year. The majority of those tourism dollars, though, come from one specific part of the country. But some traditional landowners say the lease deals they signed with high-end resorts don't do enough to combat rising levels of poverty. Our Greg Navarro explains.
This part of Fiji has a really fascinating past. The bridge that I'm standing on right here leads to what's known as Denaro Island, and we're told that its name is part of a Fijian phrase which refers to floating rubbish, which is exactly what would happen when this was a collection of swampland and mangroves during flooding. Now, that all changed in the 1970s when this was built up on reclaimed land for one very specific purpose. Today, Denaro Island is hugely important to the country's #1 economic driver, tourism. That's because 60% of all international visitors to Fiji stay on this island at five-star resorts, luxury resorts like the one behind me. In fact, the industry at the moment generates about $2 billion a year. We're told by the end of 2024, that'll go up to $3 billion a year. All this was made possible when the traditional landowners signed lease agreements with the individual resorts, each lease lasting about 99 years. Well, the tourists who stay here basically live in luxury during their time. These resorts have just about every kind of amenity you could possibly ask for. You certainly pay for it. And while these resorts have proven extremely profitable, those traditional landowners and their families who signed the original agreements say there's a great imbalance between what these businesses make in profits and what people living in the villages receive. Remember, poverty is a huge issue here in Fiji. About 40% of the population, at least 40%, live below the poverty line. Get out into the rural areas and that number doubles. Village elders and their families say there needs to be a more equitable balance between the money generated here and what goes out in the communities. But they say at the moment, under the current agreements, at least for the short term, that seems unlikely.
And China's mutual visa exemption with Thailand, Singapore, and Malaysia is an important step in diplomatic relations and will help the recovery of the region's tourism industry. But visa-free travel is not just about leisure or tourism. It's also a strategic necessity for promoting more economic integration, regional connectivity, and fostering cultural exchanges between nations. Our correspondent Dusita Saukau has more.
It picture perfectly encapsulates the uniqueness of Thai culture. The ornate details of age-old temples, the traditional wares, the peaceful ambience. Behind the scenes of this serenity are crowds of Chinese tourists, adorned in Thai attire, waiting to get that one perfect shot. Getting pictures like this has fast become a trend. Thai costume rental shops have mushroomed around key tourist hotspots, mainly catering to Chinese tourists that have come back in droves. A visa-free policy is set to bolster these numbers, as the country expects up to 20,000 Chinese tourists a day. But beneath the numbers and the economics, these scenes are fostering something else. A beautiful display of cultural exchange, a symbiotic understanding between tourists and locals.
Thailand has officially entered its visa-free era with China. It is clear that by simplifying travel procedures and removing visa barriers will lead to a robust tourism recovery. But visa policies also play a crucial role in strengthening regional connectivity and providing a bridge that connects cultures and peoples.
Traveling between two countries will bring us closer. It opens the door to the heart. Everything is open. There is no obstruction between two countries. When there are no borders, anything is possible.
The Chinese market has long been the biggest source of tourists for ASEAN countries, as the region is not only geographically close, but has strong cultural and economic ties with China. The facilitation of unrestricted travel to visa-free countries like Thailand, Singapore, and Malaysia is expected to serve as a catalyst for further economic cooperation and collaboration between China and Southeast Asian countries.
นี่ก็จะทำให้การเชื่อมโยงนะของ
This will rapidly deepen the economic links between China and ASEAN. The direction from now on, I think, is positive and will be in line with China's strategic efforts regarding the Belt and Road Initiative. The region will certainly benefit from these measures in the long run.
It's a new chapter in travel freedom through a region that is becoming increasingly connected. It's a treasure trove of cultural exchanges, business opportunities, and friendship-forging moments. A testament to the strength of diplomatic ties and the endless possibilities that can arise from opening doors and breaking down barriers. Lucita Sao Gao, CGTN, Bangkok, Thailand.
And tourist destinations around the world are keen to see the return of Chinese tourists after the pandemic. New visa-free policies are helping Singapore attract a flood of travelers from China, as our Zhang Shixuan reports.
Featuring all Singapore-style street scenes, an outdoor pop-up space is now open in Shanghai's downtown Huangpu district, run by the Singapore Tourism Board. It's not just showcasing the country's skyline with well-known scenic spots such as Gardens by the Bay, but also some of the hidden destinations. It's all to lure more Chinese travelers to Singapore.
My company will conduct a trip to Singapore. It's convenient after the visa-free policy. I can now visit Singapore whenever I want, during weekends or short vacations. During this spring festival, some of my relatives went to Singapore. They said there were many visitors.
I will travel to Singapore in March for the first time. I'm planning for a 4 to 5 day trip to visit some classic scenic spots and also have a city walk in between niche streets.
Last December, China and Singapore announced a 30-day mutual visa exemption agreement. Data from Trip.com shows 10 minutes after the announcement, the number of Singapore-related searches increased by more than 30% from the previous year. Orders made by Chinese visitors to Singapore surged more than 14 times year-on-year for this Spring Festival.
China is an important visitor source market for Singapore. China has quickly re-established itself, its pre-COVID status as a top tourism receipts contributing market in the first 9 months of 2023. We expect this will pick up in terms of the travel demand with visa-free travel. The increase in inquiries have also been reflected by our travel trade based on anecdotal comments. Some of them are experiencing a 30% to a 50% increase in inquiries since the visa-free announcement was made.
Last November, the Singapore Tourism Board started its first tourism campaign since the pandemic targeting Chinese visitors. And now, with the new visa-free policy, it's rerunning the campaign in China and working with companies serving the tourism industry to make it all more convenient for Chinese travelers.
One example is our collaboration with Singapore Airlines, Scoot Airlines, and many other airlines we work with to promote and motivate Chinese travelers to rediscover Singapore with the visa-free travel now. The other way is to make our travel to Singapore seamless, and we work very closely and collaborated with payment gateways and banks. Examples would be WeChat Pay, UnionPay International, as well as Alipay to encourage spending, one-for-one deals, and more enticing F&B offerings as well as retail offerings to Chinese stakeholders, Chinese consumers.
Data from the Immigration Inspection Station shows in the first 3 days since the visa-free announcement, there were more than 10,000 people from 2 countries arriving or departing through the Shanghai Pudong International Airport. That accounted for 90% of the total number of travelers between the 2 countries. Zhang Shixuan, ICS for CGTN Shanghai.
And that's going to do it for this edition of Global Business here on CGTN. I'm Michael Wong here in Beijing. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next time.